You're going down there, or you're going to die.
You're all gonna die up here.
Today's her last day.
She's quitting?
That's what I hear.
No.
Yeah. So don't be a bitch and go ask her out.
Man, you're my ride home. Can't you just take a cab?
I need 7 in ATM, by the way.
Just use your debit card.
Okay, I can't use my debit card because I only take cash.
All set. Let's go. What the hell's that?
Who gives a shit? Let's go.
Wait,
For what?
Just wait.
why's he out there?
Yo! Hey, buddy! You waiting to use the ATM?
What does he want then?
Probably our money.
Who cares about this jerk off? Let's go.
Says the guy who just got scared back in the booth.
Yeah, whatever.
There's $500 in here, plus a watch and a pair of earrings. It's yours, all of it, okay? Please, just let us go. We're not gonna tell anyone about this. We've never even seen your face. So you can just take this and disappear. Like nothing happened, okay? Is that okay?
What are you doing? I'm looking for a cell phone from somebody.
We've been in here for hours now trying to control what's happening to us, you know? Waiting for a reason. And what? Because we didn't do anything wrong, we're somehow supposed to be protected?
Hi, this is Larry Zerner from Friday the 13th, Part 3, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to another. It's a double ender, which Erik will be very familiar with, I'm sure, of Festive Delights. So on one end, we had Silent Night, and on the other, we have ATM, which is the one we're covering this time. As Joseph pointed out last time, the strange coincidence that we not only have we picked 2 films from 2012, but both films were shot in Manitoba in Canada.
And both are centered around Christmas. And this was totally like a coincidence. And we keep running into coincidences like this. Have you noticed that?
Well, I know it's funny, isn't it? It's kind of like Erik's jokes never get a laugh, and it's just a coincidence after coincidence, really. If that's the right terminology, I'm not sure. But yes, you welcome back to Hysteria Continues. Yes, so we are still in the festive mood. Erik is dressed as a Santa, or he's with someone dressed as Santa. I can't.
You dirty horse!
You're a cheap whore.
What are you doing, Erik?
Why, my
That's
whore?
what he's doing.
You can't speak to me like that!
So as you see, Erik's very excited for Christmas.
Very excited for Christmas.
Yes, hoping Santa will. I know we can't use the same old jokes we used the last 15 years about Santa emptying his sack.
We can't?
Well, we'll see. But I'm sure Erik will come.
You'll surely say something about Santa's sack at some stage, Justin. You're so predictable.
I already have. But Erik will hopefully, after the Silent Night episode where Erik kind of gave us that Christmas joke, which, let's say, kind of failed to raise a titter.
I liked it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Joseph liked it.
But I am tired, Eric's.
Yeah. Well, this is like 6 a.m. in the United States. So, they laugh at anything at this point.
That's all we have at this point, Justin.
Yeah. So, Joseph, how are you doing apart from being sleep deprived?
That's what I am. I'm sleep deprived. But other than that, I'm good, man.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear. We talked about our Christmas, what we watched at Christmas time. So we won't do that again. But Nathan, considering we also recorded Silent Night less than half an hour ago, how are you doing in that last half hour?
I'm doing okay. I mean, can't complain.
Well, but a Christmas miracle.
Yeah.
So, yes, excellent. So,
I like this better than baby Jesus.
did Erik get a new soundboard for Christmas, do you think?
I think he did. I don't recognize a few of these. I'm like, this new.
Yeah.
Stan says you're a cunt.
Oh, dear.
That's from South Park.
Is it? Okay.
So it's legit.
Right. Okay. Well, anyway, what was putting the C in Christmas and the C in that other words, which, of course, I'm far too well brought up to use, so although I did use it last time. But, well, let's have a little chat about what we've been watching recently. I'm not sure if if we exhausted everything on the Silent Night episode. But Erik, have you seen anything the last half hour?
In the last 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
No.
Okay. Joseph, how about you?
I managed to fit in about 12,000 movies, Justin. I'm going to go through every single one of them. Not.
Okay. Well, Nathan, I presume you didn't hold anything back, or did you? Is there anything you've remembered since we recorded?
Let's see. Well, I watched Smile 2, and it was great.
Okay.
But I said that on the last episode.
I've got important news just into me on text. Okay, you ready for this? Very important birthday today. It's Lamal from Kajagoogoo's birthday today.
Ah, is he getting his bus pass?
You know, I know you're being mean, but it's probably true because he is around that age.
Yes.
He's in his 60s, I know that.
I did hold back a couple of things. One thing, and a very Christmassy film, which we're not covering this time, but Chaks, I only just caught up with it because it came to streaming. It didn't play cinemas near me. Was Terrifier 3, which was the Christmas set sequel to obviously Terrifier and Terrifier 2, which were both set at Halloween. And for some reason, apart from I think just because it looks cool, this one was set on Christmas time. So I've kind of mixed feelings about the Terrifier movies. I kind of remember seeing the Art the Clown in or Hallows Eve, or one of the kind of anthology films from way back, maybe 2011 or something when it was. And it's, for me, in kind of some ways, I think the Art the Clown character kind of works better in that kind of short form rather than stretch over a whole 2+ hours. And again, it's another curse of those hugely bloated running times, which we talked about with Smile 2, and saying that the story didn't really need to be stretched to that amount of time. And I would say the same thing about Terrifier 3 if it actually had a story, which it kind of doesn't. And I think that's part of the problem I have with the Terrifier films, is that they are, for me, they kind of feel like kind of scenes strung together, like short movies strung together with very little kind of narrative thread. I mean, there is some narrative thread with this, and obviously I'm not going to spoil it, but there's not really much going on. If you've seen the other Terrifier movies, you know that there's the idea that Art the Clown is some kind of demon, which I think is kind of interesting. And then you've got Sienna, his kind of a nemesis, who is her father made a magic sword which she could kill Art the Clown with, although when she used it at the end of Terrifier 2, he still came back for Terrifier 3, so not quite sure how that works. So this is obviously set at Christmas time, but it really is just a kind of montage of scenes where Art the Clown and his sidekick Victoria, who arguably for me is kind of like at this point the more interesting the villains, goes around torturing and mutilating people, and that's it really. The gore is spectacular. I mean, it's kind of something that, you know, even my wildest dreams as a kid growing up in the 80s and seeing video nasties and reading about gore effects in Fangoria and Gore Zone and stuff like that, I would never have dreamed like a film this violent or this gory would ever be made, let alone see the inside of cinemas, or let alone actually be passed more or less, or probably uncut by the censors in the United Kingdom, because I think it got released unrated in the US, but I know it has been released in the UK and I'm presuming uncut. So it is so over the top, so gory. It features got sort of fun cameos from Clint Howard, of course, who was in a number of 80s horror movies, including the video nasty Evil Speak, and Tom Savini, obviously the kind of the godfather of gore, or whatever you want to call him, the maestro of mayhem when it comes to 80s splatter effects. So it kind of looks great, but I don't know. There's something weird about it as well, that Damien Leone spends quite a lot of time making these sympathetic characters. You have Sienna going to stay with her aunt and her little girl and her husband, who come across as these kind of very nice couple. And there's something kind of a bit weird about then killing them in these most brutal ways possible. And I know we always kind of say with slasher movies it's better to create believable, likable characters, but the mutilation and the torture is so extreme in these movies that it kind of it sits a bit oddly with me. So I have kind of mixed feelings about it. I don't love these movies, and maybe I'm too old for it. And I kind of get the kind of the circus mayhem of it, the grand guignol kind of extreme of it, and I can admire the artistry of the splatter effects. And Art the Clown, I think is a great villain, but that kind of shtick is kind of wearing a bit thin now. It's kind of him making Google eyes and sort of like, this kind of parody of humor and joviality of like that. He's kind of, again at 2 hour plus running time, it's kind of wearing out his welcome a little bit for me. But anyway, that's my little diatribe about Terrifier 3. But have any of you guys seen it yet, or any interest in seeing it?
I've seen it.
What are your thoughts?
Kind of the same as you. I don't know if I'm just too old and maybe I just don't fully get. I don't fully get it, because even a paper thin story like, say, Friday the 13th, which doesn't have a huge plot to it, I can really get behind that film. But I don't know. The Terrifier kind of feels like you said, it's like different gore set pieces strung together. I like that the second and third actually have a final girl that, could go, I guess go toe to toe with Art, because I felt like in the first one, they made it seem like he was just completely undefeatable. And that's just kind of boring to me. I want at least for there to be a character that you think has a chance at defeating the killer. Even if they don't. And I'm like, I just didn't feel part 1 gave that. 2 and 3 kind of did, but the problem now is just that there's just no story. I mean, there's nothing to it. It's it's got some great scenes in it. I love the scene at the mall with all the kids, and Art shows up dressed as Santa, and the kids are like sitting on his lap and all that. And that's just kind of, was funny. And I like that moment a lot. And there's this insane shower sequence that makes the scene, the locker room scene from Pieces, look pale in comparison. But I don't know. It's one of those things that it's got a great villain. It's got great gore, but it's missing something for me.
I'm interested, Joseph, because I know you said on the forums that you weren't a huge fan of the other two, but you thought the third one looked quite interesting. Are you going to give it a go, or if you've not seen it?
After what you guys have said, I will see it eventually, because I've seen the first two. I think I've seen the second one. The trailer looked great. I was like, ooh, they're going to set this at Christmas, It's going to be kind of fun, but the way you guys are describing it just sounds more of the same. And, I'm glad that Art has his fans and everything. That's great. But, if I want to watch gore scenes strung together, I'll just go piece together a few Tom Savini clips and call it a day. I'm much more interested in character, story, and suspense. That's just me.
Yeah, well, no, fair enough. And Erik, I'm kind of guessing you won't be buying the trilogy.
No, I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of the first two. I thought they were okay. 2 was way too long. I didn't like the fantasy element that was thrown in, sort of in the latter stages. I'm curious to see part 3 more than sort of anxious to see it. Like you, Justin, there was a scene in I think it's in Terrifier 2 where this girl she's on her bed and she's been having her limbs hacked off and her face hacked off, and her mother walks in, and it just seems really mean-spirited, the way it dwells on suffering, which is not something that slasher films that we sort of like from the 80s and that tended to do. And I find that kind of off-putting. And also the running time is a big sort of selling point for me. Had it been 90 minutes, maybe I would have watched it by now. But at over 2 hours, that's why it's sort of on the bottom of my to-do list, kind of. But I'm intrigued to kind of see it and see what direction it's going in, although by the sounds of it, it's not going in any direction. It's just more of the same.
But anyway, that was Terrifier 3. Just a couple of other ones quickly mentioned, because we covered, we did a commentary recently for Chopping Mall, didn't we? Which,
yeah.
And I was intrigued by the Paul Bartel and Mary Warrenoff characters who were playing the Blands as a cameo at the beginning of Chopping Mall. And I've always been aware of Eating Raoul, the 1982 black comedy. That I think it was directed by Paul Bartel, but certainly written by him, and starred him and Mary Warrenoff. And I'd never seen it, but I remember even back as a kid having this kind of reputation, and thinking, I wonder, what that's like. And so I watched it. It's a kind of very low budget black comedy with Mary Warrenoff, Paul Bartel, as he's kind of trying to raise money to open a restaurant, and they kind of realise that by killing people and selling them for pet food, they can make money. So it's just like very over the top, very silly, but I thought it was quite funny. So it's just nice to see where the blandness came from. So have you ever seen that, Nathan?
I've seen it like a really long time ago, so I don't remember a lot about it.
Okay. What about you guys? Erik or Joseph?
I think I saw it back in the 80s, but I can't remember a single thing about it.
Yeah, I've seen Eating Rattle. It's been a long time, but yeah, I've seen it. Don't really remember it.
No. Okay. Well, that sounds like everyone else. Maybe I had seen it and didn't remember it. But the last thing I'll just quickly mention, just for like a Christmas style thing, was I finally caught up with Midnight Mass on Netflix, the Mike Flanagan miniseries from 2021. Which I don't know why I slept on that for so long. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very talky. But it was. I think having been brought up Catholic and being very lapsed Catholic, as I'm sure you're probably well aware, it was really kind of interesting, kind of sort of basing it all around delusion and religion, about a kind of small seaside town on an island who basically get hoodwinked into miracles that turned out something slightly more sinister behind them. Have you guys seen Midnight Mass?
No, I've heard it's very good though. I heard it's sort of like top tier mini-series, whatever you call it these days.
I mean, it's very talky, but when it gets to the end, it feels like a Stephen King novel, very much that small town thing. But yeah, I thought it was really good. So, because I wasn't that pushed on his Mask of the Red Death, which was the other one that he did, which wasn't bad. But no, I thought this was excellent. So, okay, well, unless any of you guys have anything to chip in on that, I guess we can move into the main feature.
After leaving their company Christmas party together, David and Emily's impromptu first date takes an unexpected turn when their co-worker Corey asks them to make a late-night stop at an ATM. What should be a routine transaction turns into a bloody battle for survival when an unknown man appears and traps them inside the vestibule. With the wintry temperatures dipping below freezing and the morning sunrise still hours away, they have no choice but to play the man's deadly game of cat and mouse if they want to live through the night. With nail-biting suspense, ATM crafts one of the most shocking and suspenseful thriller tales in years. And that was from the back of the Blu-ray release of ATM, which is a thriller I first and last saw when it was released back in 2012, again like Silent Night. And I remember thinking the premise was excellent, but the end result was varied at best. I more or less feel the same way today as I did 12 years ago. You have a fantastic setup with a lot of possibilities for suspense. And to be fair, ATM, it manages to wring a frisson or two of fear from its premise. But, for me, the movie has too many fundamental flaws to call it a superior thriller. I mean, I won't pretend to know how I would behave in a situation like this. And maybe that's how you're supposed to look at the movie. Maybe it's more of a cautionary tale on unpreparedness against calculation. But that doesn't necessarily make for a good thriller. I mean, the characters, they have three modes of operation. It's complete aloofness, panic, and stupidity. And not necessarily in that order. The killer, it's hinted early on that it might be someone who got into a bad business deal with one of the main characters. But then the ending, spoiler alert, seems to suggest he has no identity except that of a psychopath with a hard-on for torturing people at ATMs and convenience stores. And he's been doing this for a long time, and he will again. So surely someone would have heard of this guy if that's the case, which either makes, the characters extra stupid for hanging around an isolated ATM at night, or the screenwriter is someone with short-term memory problems, like myself. But I was kind of fine with not knowing who the killer was. I mean, it worked wonders in Black Christmas. And, while ATM is as far removed from Black Christmas as you can get, I think it works just fine here. I didn't really care if I didn't know who the killer was. It's the characters and their decisions that really kind of dampened my mood. Because, as I said, the premise is excellent. The cinematography and overall look of the film is gorgeous. There's some intentional and unintentional humor that works. I especially loved how this ATM out seemingly in the middle of this gigantic ass parking lot right smack in the middle of nowhere seems to be this hotbed of pedestrian foot traffic at 1 o'clock in the morning in sub-zero temperatures, but whatever. I also love the scene where the killer starts to flood the ATM with water in hopes of speeding up the main character's deaths. And as they're kind of struggling to fight the rising water and hypothermia, the killer just casually pulls out this folding chair and watches from afar like it's a cheap horror film. I was even fine with the convenient way to get the characters inside the ATM. I didn't really mind all that. But again, I mean, these characters, they're not totally irredeemable or anything. They're just really dumb. Real dumb. And it's a shame because with better writing in that department, you really would have had something special here. On top of that, the film takes some insane leaps in logic during the closer to kind of wrap things up. And it kind of does this just so it can reach it's kind of a cruel resolution. So I didn't really feel it worked either way. So, I mean, you may or may not shout "no way" at the screen during the final 5 minutes. Overall, for me, I think ATM is just okay. It's mean and lean at 78 minutes before credits, so it moves quickly. I mean, it's never boring, and I can honestly say in probably 10 years' time when I've forgotten how dumb the characters are, I would probably watch it again. So it's a middle-of-the-road pick for me. I picked it because I remember it being more Christmassy, and I also remember it being more slashery. And it kind of is in both respects, but it's kind of almost it's adjacent. I can't dislike this movie. I just wish it were better. But someone who alluded to hating this movie earlier in the week, Erik, what are your thoughts on ATM?
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan. I just thought the premise was just a bit too thin to sustain even the 78 minutes running time that you mentioned. I mean, I kind of enjoyed the setup. I thought meeting the three main characters, they all had potential to be kind of interesting and likable, but as the film progresses, they become kind of irritating, I thought, and as you said, they act in increasingly illogical ways, and I found them just genuinely unlikable by the end. For me, once the film hits the ATM vestibule with Jill Goodacre, there's a Friends reference for you, Justin. Around the 30-minute mark, the film just sort of stops dead in its tracks for me. I just found it kind of suspenseless. You know, it's so silly and preposterous that any hope of tension is lost. Now, I'd be lying if I said I didn't get a kick out of how stupid the film got at times, but I did find the film boring for most of its running time. I mean, the illogicalities, if that's a word, of their actions. I mean, it's 3 against 1, so surely there's a chance of survival. I don't believe for a second that you can fill up an ATM vestibule with water. And there's just so many things. Like the killer, although we see him killing sort of random strangers in the vicinity, he doesn't come across as being that sinister and that dangerous. It also looks like they're very, very, very close to a highway or a main road. So surely they can get rescued. As for the ending, like, as you said, if this ATM killer is doing this on a regular basis, surely the police can put 2 and 2 together and see, you know, and it's that classic case. Like, this is totally like the Saw films. The killer is completely reliant on being able to predict what the victims are going to do. So he needs them to be at the ATM at 1 a.m. He needs it to be icy cold. He needs them to not try to escape. He needs them to preferably accidentally kill someone who enters the vestibule. He needs there to be only one survivor. He needs them to not have mobile phones. And he has to rely on them not doing something like writing a note and holding it up to the CCTV camera. You know, he has to rely on so many things for his plan to be executed the way he wants it to be. And they do all of those things for him. So, I don't know. But like the end of the film kind of reminded me of the way that Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows ends as well, although I'm a much bigger fan of Blair Witch 2.
Me too.
Yeah, so you know, maybe I needed a second watch. I was watching this on YouTube, which is not the ideal way for me to watch a film. It just doesn't really hold my attention. One other thing that I thought was implausible, but actually I was proved wrong, was it keeps showing a temperature reading of -6 Fahrenheit on this, you know, one of those displays you get outside chemists, which is -20 Celsius. And I was thinking, God, that's very, very cold. Is it possible for a main sort of American or Canadian city to get that cold, and apparently it is. Thankfully, we never get to -20 over here in Dublin, but so I was proved wrong. That is a realistic temperature for Winnipeg.
It can be a regular thing here sometimes. Last year we got below, like, I think it was Nathan, was it like 15 below at one point?
Minus 15 Fahrenheit.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's not. I mean, it gets even colder. It gets even colder in other parts of the country. I mean,
like, that temperature makes me think of The Day After Tomorrow, where that guy steps out of the helicopter and
it's fucking cold,
he freezes
dude.
instantly.
It is cold. Yeah.
So ATM, maybe it needs a second watch, but I just found it kind of boring. And I mean, as I said, I was kind of having a bit of fun with it, rolling my eyes, going, "Oh my god, this film is so stupidly plotted." And that sort of was kind of fun to do that, but overall, I wasn't a huge fan, I'm afraid.
Fair enough. Like I said, I'm middle of the road. Nathan has mentioned about ATM before. Like, for some reason, this is a movie that has like a great premise that I just keep wanting to go back to, but I never slap myself and say stop. But Nathan, what are your thoughts on ATM?
I would probably lean a little more towards your opinion on it, Joseph, in that I do like the movie. It's got its problems, but overall I do like it. I probably like it for the wrong reasons, though, because I think part of what I do like is just how completely ridiculous it gets. I mean, again, like you were saying, nobody knows, I guess, how they're going to react in that situation, but there's a few things I feel like I would not do, and these characters do those things. Like Erik said, it's 3 versus 1. The killer doesn't have a gun. I mean, at first, of course, they don't know that, but I mean, I don't know. It's just, there's other things I think that they could have done. I also feel the killer is, by the film, being painted as being this like really intelligent, crafty killer, when in reality, I think he's just super lucky.
Yep.
Like, he's just very lucky that all the characters do everything he needs them to do. And also, I was thinking about the ending, because, spoiler alert, for anyone who's not seen it, I'm going to spoil it. So at the end, the main guy is the only survivor left, and he basically gets blamed for the killings, and they're taking him away at the end, the police are. That's why Joseph was kind of like, it's kind of a cruel ending. But I kept thinking to myself, at the end, we see the killer planning all these other ATM attacks. I mean, the guy's case isn't going to make it in court because the killer's going to keep doing this.
I know, exactly.
So I don't think the ending is as bad as we think, because there's no way that this case is going to last if the killer's out here doing the same thing, unless they think it's a copycat of, like, every time it's going to be a copycat.
I mean, even at the police station, surely he could have said, like, this is what happened. They're like, yeah, we have some similar cases, so we need to find this guy. But the way they frame the ending, it almost feels like he's been doing this forever, but no one even knows about it. No one even knows that people are dead. It just felt really weird and kind of shoehorned in.
Yeah, definitely I guess an odd choice. I think they were trying to go for a clever kind of gotcha ending, but I just kept thinking to myself how, it would never happen. I mean, if that was going to be one isolated incident and the killer wasn't planning on doing this anymore, or he hadn't done it before, then maybe. But that's not the case. So I'm like, there's no way this ending works in that way. I mean, I'm probably thinking way too much about it. But yeah, in general, I just kind of felt that there were better decisions that could have been made. I think the biggest thing for me is that the killer had to rely that all 3 of these people would not one of them would have their cell phone on them. And I'm like, that's just not reality. I mean, my cell phone's always in my pocket. So, I mean, I'd just always have it on me. So, I mean, it just, it's one of those things like, oh, one guy lost his. She left hers in the car, and they're parked too far away from the ATM, which is another thing. They parked like 50 miles away to walk to it.
Why did they park so far away?
They do kind of explain that half-assedly. It's like, oh, he's punishing me. He's going to make me walk.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I forgot about that part. But anyway, so they parked so far away, and just, again, the killer would not have known that. And for the killer probably would have assumed they would have parked right next to it. So again, it's just another thing that works out very well in the killer's favor. So anyway, I think this needs to be changed from ATM to the luckiest killer in the world.
And are we to believe that he's manipulated the CCTV footage at the end?
No, because I think he's the main character, because he smashes the camera, doesn't he?
Yeah, but he smashes everything that's just perfectly conveniently cut out, except for the scenes that he's going to be framed for. It seems to me like maybe the killer did something. It would just be too much of a coincidence otherwise.
Well, the whole point is that at the end of the movie, it's shown that the killer's doing all this stuff. He knows exactly where to stand, not to be recognised not to be caught by any security cameras. So he's, like you say, he's methodically planning everything. But, or like you say, all the other things are all, luck on his thing, because I guess you could explain away the fact that he could just wait in the shadows for the right victim to turn up. So he may not have, if someone else had gone in and parked right next to it, he may have just not bothered with them. So he kind of was waiting around for exactly the right person to do this with. But having said that, I mean, but for me, if you finished, Nathan, sorry.
Oh no, I have.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want Rhubarb Lady to come out for Christmas. But for me, it's funny actually. I think it's kind of the other way. It's kind of a mirror image of The Silent Night, whereas that you guys all like that film more than I did. Whereas I'm sort of actually, I don't mind the kind of ridiculousness of this. I think given the fact it is a kind of like popcorn thriller where once you realise you do have to kind of check your expectations and sort of make allowances, then I just kind of went along for the ride. I mean, I thought the opening scene with the characters, I think was really well written, and so much it kind of reminds me of that film, and I can't remember the name of the film, that Japanese film that starts off like a rom-com. Then when she ends up with putting him in the bag and sticking full of needles. Audition, that was it, yeah. I mean, it's nothing like Audition, but it's just the fact is if you tuned into this, apart from the opening sequence where you see the killer, again, you don't know why, but they're doing stuff with architectural plans, which you find out why at the end of the movie. It could very well be just like a kind of a Christmas set rom-com with this guy trying to, being encouraged by his friend to ask out his office crush on her last day. And I thought all the characters, they were quite sort of, I thought they were pretty well acted and quite rounded in that limited amount of time you get to know them. So I thought that was done pretty well. It is so over the top and silly, but I didn't mind that. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, as you point out, Nathan, I think the fact is that the killer went to all this trouble of all the planning not to be caught on any cameras, but all it would have taken was one of them to take their cell phone in, then they could have called the police. They
didn't have a cell phone.
Well, they did. Well, they had. There was a cell phone, wasn't there? She had hers in the car. And
they left it in the car. They couldn't get to it.
No, that's what I mean. It's unlikely. Even back in 2012, people wouldn't have been carrying cell phones on them in their pocket. And you wouldn't leave them, three of them in the car, and it's unlikely the other two wouldn't have had cell phones. I mean, it's 2012, not like 2002. So, but again, you have to suspend disbelief. And I did wonder with the whole thing with the killer wearing that Parker outfit and the comparisons with Urban Legend, because it is identical look to the killer. And maybe that's why it kind of stubbornly didn't quite go down the slasher movie route, although it kind of did. As like I say, it's kind of more than slasher adjacent in so much that you've got this killer who is bumping off anyone who comes around, the security guards, the dog, the poor dog walker. But I kind of overall, I thought it's kind of a taut time. I think arguably it would have worked better as a kind of extended short movie. I kind of agree with Erik that perhaps it doesn't, the concept doesn't really extend to a full hour, or kind of like a Twilight Zone episode, something along those lines, like half an hour, 40 minutes rather than like 78 minutes. But I do like it. I mean, I didn't think the characters, were particularly stupid. I mean, I think, like you say, there were three of them. And so I just thinking if there were four of us, say it was the Hysteria Continues and we were on tour, and then Erik wanted to stop off and get a sausage. And but we didn't have any. We had to go and get cash because you can only pay cash for sausages for some reason. then and then we were in there and there were 4 of us, then what would we do? You know, killers outside. But the answer I would be, because what you do is you go out like wasps out of a nest, off in different directions, running as fast as you could, wouldn't you? So I would go running to the left, Nathan to the right, sort of Joseph would go off to the middle, but like dodge the killer, and we'd trip Erik up as we came outside, and then 3 of us would survive, and it would be Happy Christmas.
Oh my God, Justin.
Yeah.
What?
That's so mean.
Thank you.
I'm just looking for my soundboard.
For me, you know, by the time they got to the end of this movie and like that main dude had been through so much, he's facing hypothermia. His one friend is already dead from that and the knife wound. You know, at the end, I'm like, fuck this. I'm going out. We're having a fist fight. I may lose, but one of us is going down. I'm going to die anyway. I'm going out swinging.
Well, I do think the other thing that it didn't quite answer was obviously, is it Alice Eve or I can't remember the actress' name?
Yeah.
But the character died. Did she die? Because it didn't really make it that clear.
Yeah, she broke her neck.
She broke her neck. Okay, because it kind of left it slightly. You were I wasn't entirely sure, but I mean that was, it kind of. I don't know. I liked it, but I can certainly see where you're all coming from with the. This thing. And I think sometimes when you start spotting these inconsistencies with a movie like this, you either just have to check your brain in and go with it, or it can become irritating.
Yeah, and I don't mind all the silly, preposterous, plot developments. I think my problem was, like Nathan said, they paint this as a pseudo-serious kind of smart thriller, but they don't really play it smart. So if I'm going to watch a smart thriller, I want it to be smart. If I'm going to watch a dumb movie, I just want it to be dumb.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. I don't know if you have anything left to say on it. I know we've got some background.
I think it would have worked better with a supernatural villain to explain away the silliness.
It might have.
Yeah, I can see that. So, backgrounds.
Yeah, I have a few bits and pieces here. Josh Peck, who plays Corey, is probably best recognized as the chubby kid from that Nickelodeon show Drake and Josh, or that subsequent documentary Quiet on Set about the frankly shitty goings-on at that studio. And he also shares a last name with the dialogue coach, Brian Peck. No relation, but Brian Peck was discovered to have abused several children on the set of many Nickelodeon shows, including Josh Peck's co-star Drake Bell. Brian Peck, again, no relation to Josh, might best be remembered as Scuzz from Return of the Living Dead. Josh Peck, who as far as I'm aware, was spared abuse on the set of his Nickelodeon show, but he did become a self-admitted drug addict not long after the incidents at Nickelodeon happened. But he has been clean and sober since 2008. I'm not saying there's any correlation there, but I'm just saying. Brian Garrity, who played David, he was in 2 underrated mid-aughts sort of slasher thrillers that I really like. The When a Stranger Calls remake from 2006 and the gloriously awful Lindsay Lohan sleaze fest I Know Who Killed Me from 2007. So he's got some slasher movie pedigree in a way. This wasn't writer Chris Sparling's first rodeo with confined space horror. He had written previously the Ryan Reynolds vehicle Buried 2 years previous. I guess he has a thing about being trapped in one location. It was shot in September of 2010 in Winnipeg. There's that Silent Night connection again. On an estimated budget of $3 million, but for whatever reason sat on a shelf for a couple of years before it was screened in a handful of theaters and then dumped quietly to DVD and Blu-ray. All told, it took in just under $1 million worldwide, so it was a box office bomb and had a very short theatrical window. And that's all the background I have.
Excellent. What about you, Erik? Have you got anything?
Just that Alice Eve is the daughter of Trevor Eve, who we would remember, Justin, as playing Shoestring on that detective show from the 70s and 80s. That's all I have.
Cool. Okay, thank you. And Nathan?
ATM stands for Automated Teller Machine.
Wow. Well, I have a couple of things. Just I pulled out some reviews from the when it had it come out limited theatrical release. Although it was one of those movies that actually had a video on demand release first before theatrical bow, which is something is kind of a little bit more common now. But in the Star Ledger, critic Stephen Whitty said, there are 1 or 2 small scares and a score by David Buckley is nice and unsettling, but none of this builds into anything or engenders any real suspense. Glenn Whipp in the Los Angeles Times said it was equally unimpressed and inexplicably called the film tedious. And I wouldn't, I certainly wouldn't call the film tedious. It may be ridiculous, but not tedious. Elizabeth Weitzman in the Daily News called it an example of claustro cinema, which kind of links back to that. There must have been like a thing going on at the time, because I say this was filmed in 2010 and Buried, that Ryan Reynolds movie you mentioned, Joseph. It's kind of like, that's kind of the ultimate in claustro cinema, isn't it? With him being trapped in a coffin throughout. It kind of got slightly better reviews when it got released to home video. The record said it delivers subtlety and shocks. So I'm not sure about the subtlety, but although one critic did say it contained a blizzard of implausibilities, which is a nice way of putting it. It's certainly Christmassy as well. So
very apt.
Yes. So that was ATM. So did it strike a nerve with our listeners?
Well, we had 14 comments across the board, and here's the top 3. Robert Medlock on Instagram writes, not a slasher and a boring, dreadful film. Certainly scraping the bottom of the barrel with this one. Sorry about that, Robert. Erik would agree at least. David Tappenden on Facebook says, interesting premise, nicely shot, well acted, but like my own trips to the ATM, disappointingly empty of substance. Very clever, David. And Chris Stanton, also from Facebook, wraps things up with, here's my 2.5-star Letterboxd review. I'm apparently in the minority here, but I liked the characters, enjoyed the setup, at least the first 15 minutes, and thought Josh Peck was great. And even though it was silly, I was caught up in the movie throughout, despite ridiculous plot holes, i.e. why did he park so far away? That is answered rather poorly in the movie, we mentioned. He finishes with, it was the feeble ending that really ruined things. This is a case where explanation of the killer's motives was sorely needed, and tying it to the protagonist's jobs as money managers would have been an interesting way to go. And I think I might have agreed there. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram to know what we're doing ahead of time. Listen on all podcatchers, both good and terrible, though for purely selfish reasons, please consider our YouTube and Patreon feeds. Over 200 plus bonus episodes, commentaries, quizzes, and top 3s on Patreon. We've done it all. That's patreon.com/The Hysteria Continues. That's our email address as well, thehysteriacontinues@gmail.com. Mr. Kurzweil.
Okay, yes, well, please do. And I kind of guess Eric's already ruined Christmas on the last episode with his joke of the week. So it's your chance now, Erik, to redeem yourself with a joke.
Yes.
That will make all our Christmas dreams come true.
It's my joke of the week. It's so freaking fantastic.
Why did the tightrope walker go into the ATM vestibule? To check his balance. Also, how does a Cenobite withdraw money from a cash machine? He uses his pinhead number. Thank you very much.
I think those are better,
Erik,
Erik.
you're 2 for 2 for me, actually.
So, excellent. Well, also we have some feedback, I believe, don't we?
Yes.
Nathan, you want to go first?
Yeah, I will. Okay, so this says, hello, Justin, Erik, Joseph, and Nathan. I am a longtime listener to your podcast, but have only now decided to let you know how much I appreciate your work. When I first started listening to your podcast after accidentally coming across it on YouTube, pun intended, I had just lost my father to leukemia and was in a dark place. Your banter, genuine likability, and sense of humor, as well as your vast knowledge on all things slasher, pulled me through those dark times, and I have not stopped listening and await each new episode with tremendous anticipation. I just thought I would finally let you know that you have really helped me come back, enjoying life, and it means a lot. Not to get too mawkish, back to the great slasher movies that you cover so well. Have you ever considered covering Laid to Rest and its sequel Chrome Skull? Although not Premier League movies, I think it would be interesting to see what you think of them, or maybe the Tiny Tim starring Blood Harvest, which is another rope for a deep dive. Anyway, I am glad to have finally let you know that I love your content and hope you keep slashing for many years to come. Yours in blood, Thomas Howland, Wexford, Republic of Ireland.
Oh, hello, Thomas.
Oh, one of your compatriots.
Yes, just not far from me, yeah.
Anyway, I have one here.
Excellent.
It says, Dear THC, medium to long-time listener, I found your podcast during the first wave of COVID. Theoretically, second-time caller. I sent an email a few years ago suggesting the majorettes for an episode, but received no reply and didn't catch a reply on the podcast. In any case, I reiterate that I hope one day you'll cover the majorettes, aka One by One. And sorry, sometimes these things can go to spam and we miss it, so we're reading it now. Thank you for the excellent podcast, which has not only buoyed me through epidemics and injuries, but has created this circuit of finding new films thanks to the podcast, or finding them on my own and returning to see if THC has already covered them. You often have. I have a question for Nathan. What does the phrase, the Old Federal, refer to in the titles of the Old Federal Massacre films, Nathan?
Oh, well, I'd love to give you like a very clever response, but my grandma used to live on a road called Old Federal Road.
Oh.
I just took the road name and put massacre at the end of it.
That
it has
mystery
nothing to do
solved.
with Confederates, I promise.
He goes on to say, I also have 2 stray pieces of useful information. Number 1, there was an episode where you closed with Edwige Fenech singing Ghostbusters, with Justin pointing out that this YouTube clip came devoid of context. I asked a native Italian friend about it and will quote his explanation verbatim. One of the many substandard programs by Silvio Berlusconi in one of his channels. I don't remember, but I suppose the formula was the same as in any other of his creations. Locker room jokes, naked women, advertising. I'm guessing this is poorly translated. I don't really understand what he's saying, but he's saying it.
Well, Silvio Berlusconi was a disgraced ex-prime minister, wasn't he, of Italy?
He had dirty parties with nudie ladies.
Yeah, I know he was, but the sentence structure just kind of seems, I wonder if it's lost in translation. Number 2, elsewhere in your Too Beautiful to Die episode, you speculated whether a pornographic video game being played by a character during one scene was real or had been made for the film. I can confirm it's real, as I saw it at a friend's house on his Commodore 64 in the late 1980s. It's called Sex Games, and I've supplied a link about it.
Ooh.
And I'm not going to read out that link name.
Because it's dirty. Not at Christmas.
Yes, it's dirty. Not at Christmas. My parting comment for now is that it took me months, years maybe, to understand exactly what Erik was saying during his Joke of the Week jingle. It's oh so brilliant and fantastique. Is that right, Erik?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Because
so
I needed fantastic to rhyme with weak, so I changed it to fantastique.
Yeah, even I didn't know what it meant. Even I still didn't know what he was saying, but he says, but now that I do understand it, I can't mentally recreate my former state of being unable to understand it. Anyway, the Pavlovian response it generates in me is a positive one, as it means the Joke of the Week is imminent.
Yay!
Thank you, Hysteria continues. Wade from Sydney, Australia.
Thank you, Wade.
Yes, thank you, Wade. So, and thank you for those tidbits of information. And I say, I don't like to use the word tidbits when talking about Edwige Fenech, but
you could say he weighed in with some juicy information there.
But yeah, so apologies if some of the, as I think we said on the last episode, we've been a few scheduling problems and things like that, and some of the feedback got lost in the mix. But I think we're kind of caught up now. So if you have got any feedback, do you want to send us in the new year? Because we've got plenty more to come. Then do let us know. And they say as a festive thing, and we did mention last time, but we are covering Black Christmas, the original 1974, 74, 75. But anyway, the mid-70s Black Christmas from Bob Clark, and being joined by Armando Munez, who is writing the official novelization of Black Christmas, and also will sure tell us a little bit about his official novelization of Silent Night, Deadly Night. He did April Fool's Day as well, didn't he?
No, he did Happy Birthday to Me and Basket Case.
Oh, and My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah.
Did he not do April Fool's Day? Or maybe that's on the cards. I don't know. We can ask him about it anyway.
It might be on the cards. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if he does, that's awesome.
Yeah.
He's racking them in.
Well, somebody needs to do that, don't they? Because didn't they just release April Fool's Day without they couldn't locate, or they didn't locate the kind of the famous or infamous lost final chapter of that movie?
Yeah. I don't know. I really need to look into this because that's one of my favorite movies. But I do want to say about Armando, his books have been getting a lot of rave reviews. So apparently, he's been a longtime friend, but I shamefully have never read anything he's written. But I am looking forward to reading, his books, and they're getting, great marks across the board. So check those out. They're from the Stop the Killer board game thing. You can just search Stop the Killer and it'll bring up all the titles he's done. So
Excellent. Yes, well, we're looking forward to that. So that should be a good listen because obviously he is an expert, having written the novelisation, and it's one of our favourite movies. So yeah, join us over on Patreon for that. And I guess it just sort of remains before we wish you all a Merry Christmas. What?
It's a Nathan pick.
It's a Nathan pick. Yes. So if you want to start your new year, you've got, not only will you have the incoming Trump presidency to look forward to, you will also have a Nathan pick. So Nathan, what have you got for us?
Well, I don't think you guys are going to be too disappointed on this one. We are going to be covering Grotesque.
Ah, okay. I did review that on the site years ago, so yeah, I can definitely see that being a Nathan pick, but I'm quite intrigued to revisit that. So good choice.
We wouldn't expect anything else from you, Nathan.
Thank you.
So, okay, well, as another year closes, I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas and a festive Christmas and a happy New Year. And stay away from Santa's with a big chopper. And we will keep recycling those jokes.
For yourself.
Well,
I'll be running towards Santa's with big choppers.
Yes, I imagine well, we haven't even made the joke about Santa's sack, have we, Erik?
Not in this one, no.
No. But what are we playing out with?
Well, since I thought the characters were kind of dumb in this movie, how about You Don't Deserve a Goddamn Thing for Christmas by Polka Dot Cadaver?
Very good. Okay. I don't know it, but it sounds ideal.
Yes, very ideal.
Excellent. Okay. Right. Well, thank you for listening to everyone. And we'll catch you next year in the new year on Hysteria Continues. And join us over Patreon for a lot more content. And we'll say goodbye, a festive goodbye to the good people.
Jingle goodbye, jingle goodbye, jingle goodbye all the way. Is that festive enough?
It is very festive. So, yes, a festive goodbye to one and all.
To all a good night.
Ho, 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 shit.
You don't deserve a goddamn thing for Christmas.
Incidentally, Nathan, in your oeuvre, did you ever make a Christmas slasher or attempted to?
Yeah, Old Federal Massacre Part 3 is a Christmas slasher.
I have to. Is that available on YouTube?
Yeah, it is. And it's actually got the wonderful opening narration of the presents were hung under the tree with care with hopes that a killer would soon be there, which in hindsight doesn't make a lot of sense because why would you hope that the killer will be there? But at the time, I just thought it sounded cool.
And why would you hang Christmas presents?
I didn't put a lot of thought into that.
Well, it still sounds a bit more plausible than some of the things in ATM.
Yes.